Good morning, I'm John Waters. This is Inspiring Careers, and this is one of the great stars of our industry, the delightful Wendy Komadina, who I had the pleasure of placing in 2003 and helped her hopefully on her journey with Dell. So I was very keen to catch up with you. We caught up at Moxie a couple of weeks ago, and we hadn't seen each other for a couple of years. I want you to give everybody an overview today on your journey and even where it started. Where's your family from?
Gosh, my family history, my parents are Argentinian. But the interesting part about that is that my mum is an is an indigenous Argentinian. So she came from a tribe. So my great-grandmother was a tribal princess, and they had a tribe name and all of that. So
is that where you get your looks from? Yeah.
A little bit, I think so. So if you actually look at a photo of my family, I do have some family members that actually look very indigenous.
Yeah.
And then on my dad's side of the family, they migrated from Spain to Argentina, and so they're more white. So my dad was blonde with green eyes. So I've got a little bit of a blend.
So, sorry, did your mum and dad migrate down to Australia then, say in the 60s or something? When did they come here?
So my parents migrated to Australia in the 70s.
Yes.
With my older brother already born. And long story, but to cut it short, I was born in Australia, but then was taken back to Argentina and grew up. I did my first language is actually Spanish.
Yeah.
So I learned how to speak English around the age of about 7 because my parents moved me back to Argentina. And then throughout my life, we moved backwards and forwards.
Isn't that fantastic? And so where did you grow up in Sydney then?
So I grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney. So we moved around quite a bit. My parents first migrated to Bondi, then they moved to Ashfield and Haberfield, a whole bunch of different places. But I'd say that a small chunk, or maybe 7 years of my childhood was in the Fairfield area, so out in the western suburbs of Sydney. And then now I've been in the Hills District for about almost 25 years.
Yes.
So I feel part of the Hills District, but I also did some of my high school years in Argentina. So
oh, did you?
I did.
Yeah.
So reading and writing in Spanish, that was fun.
So would you see yourself at some stage of your life going back to live either there or going to Europe and living in Spain as a European channels director or something?
I'm always open to different opportunities, but at this stage I've got two sons, and I think I will wait until they decide what they want to do with their lives before I make any big moves.
No, that's excellent. Now, you went to uni at the University of Western Sydney.
Yes.
And what did catch my eye is you're such a high flyer. I noticed that you were a legal secretary when you were at university. Could you talk me through that?
Yeah. So actually, one thing that you probably didn't see is when I was at, they've renamed it to Western Sydney University.
Yes.
It used to be University of Western Sydney. I actually went back and was a uni lecturer for 7 years. So that's something that I did part-time. So going back to your question around the legal secretary, one part about my personality that some people know about is that I'm a person that does things with a lot of intention. You know, I'm very intentional. So if I reverse back into my high school years, there was a TV show called Melrose Place, and in the TV show there was Amanda Woodward, who everyone knows her as Heather Locklear. She was this advertising executive. She'd have these pencil skirts and boss everyone around, and I wanted to be her. So I had this vision of myself wanting to, be in a corporate environment, leading a team and leading a strategy. And the path to get there was to go to university.
Yep.
But I wanted to create a plan B. So the plan B was I'm going to, in parallel to year 11 and 12, I'm going to do a secretarial course. So just in case I don't get into university, I will become a secretary and I'll work my way up. That was the plan. So fast forward, I get into uni, but at the same time I graduate as a secretary whilst I'm getting my high school certificate.
Yeah.
So I went into, I started university, and I immediately realized I've got these skills. I want to use them. I want to use these skills to make money. So within about 6 months, I realized I could get a job as a secretary and get ahead of everybody else. So my first job was actually not as a legal secretary, was working at Lincoln Electric Company. So they do welding machines. And so I went and I became the secretary to the sales director. And I very quickly became extremely ambitious. And I just started applying for jobs. I got a job as a legal secretary. And one of the interesting things about that was that I was a touch typer. So back in the day, the partner, so they were responsible for litigation, would actually talk into a little dictaphone, and then I would take the little tiny cassette, I'd put my headphones on and I'd touch type, and at one point I was doing about 64 words a minute. I think it was 64 words a minute, which was not that fast, but I was so proud of myself. So anyway, that's my legal secretarial background.
So then how did you end up getting started in technology then?
Yeah. So I married really young. Again, super ambitious. There's a whole story behind that. But when I was in my final year at university, I had been a legal secretary for maybe a year or something. And I realized, oh gosh, the partner who was working at the law firm said to me, do you want to change your degree and become a lawyer, a solicitor? And I thought about it and I sat on that for a little while and I realized, actually, I don't. It doesn't light me up. It's not a path that I see myself taking. So I really think that question stopped me in my tracks and made me realize I don't want to be in this industry. I want to leave. So I started applying for jobs in marketing because my degree was a Bachelor of Commerce and I majored in marketing. And I reached the fork in the road. I had a job interview with Ferrero Rocher and I had a job interview with Compaq, who have since been acquired by Hewlett Packard, which has been relabeled HPE. So what happened there was I was interviewing for both and I really wanted the job with Ferrero Rocher. I was imagining myself, working in the confectionery industry and I was going to get free chocolate. And I had imagined myself doing this, and my husband at the time, I just got married, said to me, you should go and work for Compaq. And I'm like, who are they? Like, what do they do? And he said, trust me, you should go work for Compaq. So I took the Compaq job. I guess I had no idea where it would lead me, and here I am.
So when you joined them, I presume they were in Rhodes or somewhere originally when they started off in the early 90s. Ian Penman used to run them.
Ian Penman was he was I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Well, I'm delighted to say that Ian and Aisha are great friends of myself and Erica because our kids went to school together at Tudor House.
Oh, there you go.
And I got Aisha back into the IT game when she'd been out for years after having the children.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Ian was the managing director for Compaq, and look, so the job that I took was actually as the admin, it was the partner marketing assistant to the partner marketing director. Yeah. Terry Sherry was his name. And anyway, so the point is I got the job and I was surrounded by a group of very talented product managers or product marketing managers in the particular business unit that I was part of was the desktops, workstations, laptops, the peripherals, and down the hallway was the server storage networking team. So fast forward about maybe a couple of months into that role, I think there's a bit of a pattern forming here. Yeah. I saw an opportunity. And there was a role advertised for a junior product manager for server storage networking peripherals, which was all the NIC cards and the tape drives and all the boring stuff that nobody wanted to do. So I waltzed down the hallway and there was a guy sitting in the office. His name was also Terry. And I knocked on his door and I said, oh, hi, my name's Wendy. Can I come in? And he's kind of looked at me and he said, sure, like, how can I help you? Or whatever he said to me. And I said to him, I'm here to apply for the job of junior product manager. And I think you need to give me the job. And I don't know what words I used or what he said, but I think he was a bit shocked with how cocky and I guess arrogant, maybe even a little bit arrogant that I was. And I basically said to him, look, if I'm rubbish, just fire me. Just give me an opportunity to do the job. And anyway, I got the job.
Yes. Yeah.
Got the job. So.
And was there anybody we mentioned Ian early in the piece, were you able to find people who were able to coach you, mentor you, influence you?
No, I didn't. Not at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I think the coaching and mentoring came a little bit later because the role was a new role. So there was nobody there that was existing that showed me the ropes. So I treated that as an opportunity to learn. And yes, there were people that I learnt from, but there wasn't anybody that I looked up to and thought I want to be them. That came probably 5 years later when you came into my life.
Yeah. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. Yeah.
I think, so I'll tell you what happened. So what happened was that about a year and a half or something into my first year in the tech sector, HPE or Hewlett-Packard at the time announced that they were acquiring Compaq. And in Australia, it was like a reverse takeover because a lot of the employees from Compaq were the people who got the job at Hewlett-Packard.
Yes.
So there were a couple of different things that happened at that point in my career that were, I would define them as shocking and eye-opening. One of them was that the person who was doing the server product manager role was a man who was probably in his, I think he must have been in his 40s or 50s at the time, a lot older than me. I was probably around 22. I had very little experience, and he and I both had to apply for the job, and I got the job. The second thing that happened was after many years of experience, maybe about 4 or 5 years in the same role, I did have people that I looked up to and worked with and so on. But I did feel like I was being held back a little bit. You actually reached out to me, and this is where you come into the picture. I don't remember how it came about. Maybe you called me or maybe you emailed me. And
do we have email then?
I don't know. I don't even know how you found me.
I think I was referred to you by somebody at Dell who I'd placed who had worked with you.
I actually don't even know why you reached out to me, because I felt like a nobody. And anyway, the point is you reached out to me, and I haven't told you this part of the story. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't, but you reached out to me and we arranged a meeting, and I thought I need to make myself look important. So we agreed to catch up, of all places, a shopping centre.
Was it the shopping centre in Rose?
It was a shopping centre, and it was so early that nothing was open. And I sat in a food court and I thought, I don't know if this guy thinks if I'm smart or not, but I need to look important. So I opened up my laptop and I pretended to type. And I think I had like a notepad or something to write on. I don't know what I did, but I just remember thinking, I need this man as he walks towards me to think I'm capable, I'm in control, and she's very important and very busy. So you came along and we sat down and we had a conversation. And I mean, you probably could tell the other half of that story.
Oh, no, I knew straight away that you were somebody going. I will tell everybody an anecdote at the end about that particular interview that Wendy had with Simon Johnson, because it is actually quite humorous and quite prophetic, funny enough, in terms of her future career. When you joined Dell, did you feel, I'm really starting to go places? Did you feel a bit better pace there? No?
No, but I'll tell you something that kind of. So the point is that, look, I got the job, and honestly, I have you to thank for reaching out to me. And I guess, look, you may not see this, but for me, I've always been thankful that you reached out to me and you gave me the opportunity you put me in front of people that saw something in me that I just didn't know I had. But you asked the question just now, did I feel important or did I feel like I was getting somewhere? So I must have been so cocky and looked so confident on the outside, and on the inside, I just felt so stupid. I'll never forget that the president of the business unit or the division his name was Amit, and he was coming to Sydney for, I think, a QBR or something. and Simon Johnson, and at the time Michelle Stevenson, who now works.
Michelle Irish beautiful lass.
I think she is now at Adobe or something. Lovely lady. I think they must have thought I was much more capable than I was, and they put me in front of Amit for this business review, and I must have waffled or said something, and I just remember the look in their eyes going, I don't know that she was ready to be put in front of Amit. But anyway, look, at that point I realized I had a lot to learn. So Dell for me was probably the place where I really, really learnt my craft, because they were growing so fast. I must have been around the 100th employee at the time. I was very early on in the business. I just remember that it was a really young team of professionals who were going places, and I was one of the younger ones. So one thing that really opened my eyes and changed me. So you asked me earlier, were there people who influenced me? The place where I was influenced was actually Dell. And it was because fast forward into, a couple of years into Dell, there was a fundamental shift in the business, and that was the country manager at the time, David Miller. He was poached. In fact, Bill Amelio was the president. Bill Amelio left Dell to start the Lenovo business.
Lenovo, yes.
And then he took with him David Miller, Rod Lappin, and a whole Nick Lazaridis, like all these names of people that I used to work with, and they all left. They all got promoted and they all moved to Singapore. And I remember thinking, why didn't they take me? What's wrong with me? And I just remember thinking, okay, there's something about this that I need to learn. Number one is I need to learn to make myself relevant to the market. I need to be relevant outside of Australia. So that was my first real experience and real influence around, I want to be part of this Asia Pacific team. I don't want to be Australia. I want to be Asia Pacific. So that was number one. Secondly, I realized that once you become somebody who's got experience outside of Australia, your perspective is different. The people you interact with are, it's not necessarily that they're smarter, but they have got a lot more value that they bring back into the market. And I wanted that. That was the first time that I realized I wanted to be part of the Asia Pacific team.
Now, just on that, because I mean, in a former life, I was a brand manager or marketing graduate at Procter & Gamble. So you're playing in that brand management, product management space. When did you start moving more towards the channel management, where you're starting to engage with senior business leaders in your reseller community, for want of a better word? Did you get to do that at Dell, or were they still running a direct model at that stage?
So I actually got to do it at HPE and Compaq, because HPE and Compaq very early on in my career, they were working with their distribution partners, and they were working with resellers.
Yeah.
So from the very, very beginning, I established relationships with distribution and partnerships. And I learnt that craft. When I went to Dell were a direct business. So that's when I learnt direct. And I was responsible for working and selling direct into SMB, mid-market and enterprise. The whole time I was at Dell, they did not have a channel business. The entire time they were direct. So fast forward, I went to Microsoft. I became a parent. So my oldest son is now at university and he's turning 20 this year. But at the time, when I went to Microsoft for a very short period of time and then went to Cisco for 7 years, that's when I realized I was really passionate about channel. That was when I went back into channel after spending time direct. The big differences that I saw was when I was working direct, it was very transactional.
Yeah.
So you talk to a customer or you have a conversation about a deal or whatever it is that you're doing was very transactional. And then you moved on very quickly. And if you didn't move on, you wouldn't make your numbers. And so I found that to be exhausting. I found that it wasn't me.
Yeah.
So when I went on maternity leave and I came back, and I started working with channel partners, I realized I was working with the same people that I'd worked with at Compaq, and I was interacting with the same people, the same business partners, and that excited me.
Yeah.
I loved it that I could have a conversation about multiple campaigns or multiple customer opportunities or multiple product conversations, but it was with the same people, and I fell in love with that. I think the second thing that really, really moved me in the direction of channel was that I realized that being in the channel business was very strategic. So it was like you were the general manager, the GM of somebody else's business, and you were responsible for the health, the wellness, the growth of somebody else's business and helping them succeed. And I loved that.
Yeah.
I really wanted more of that.
Yeah. When you look at your career, and we did talk about it earlier, I mean, you've got a very stable work history, but you've evolved within business. Do you feel that every couple of years you need something else within the business to keep you mentally challenged? Why would you, 2 or 3 jobs at Dell, 2 or 3 jobs at Cisco, etc.? Did people come looking for you, or did you go and seek out your next opportunity?
Almost every role that I've had, people have come to me and said, I think you'd be great at X, Y, Z. And the roles that I gravitate towards, I mean, I've had opportunities that I've spoken to people about, and then I'm like, it just doesn't excite me. And it took me a really long time to realize what excited me. And there's a couple of different things in this conversation. I could take it in 2 directions. I'm going to go back to a question you asked me earlier, like why channel? So I talked about I love the strategy, and I saw something different when I went back into it. A mentor, somebody who I asked to mentor me a long time ago when I was at Lenovo. I was sitting in actually, I need to give you the backstory. So let me give you the backstory.
We've got plenty of time. I'm very relaxed and I'm enjoying talking to you, okay?
So the backstory is from Cisco. I was at Cisco for 7 years. I was getting a little bit kind of bored. I was doing I did a bunch of different roles there, and I loved working at Cisco. One of the greatest companies I worked for. I loved it. Really, really loved it. I used to think my dream job was to be the business unit leader for a product division. And the reason I thought that was because back when I was at Compaq, in my first job, I was product manager for server storage networking. So my dream job in my head was I want to be the BU manager. I want to run the team. So Lenovo tapped me and they said to me, hey, look, there's an opportunity to be head of brand, which in summary means to be the business unit leader for server storage networking. And part of that includes marketing and, a whole bunch of other things, like PR and analyst relations and so on. I'm like, wow, this is a dream job. How cool is this? And as soon as I got there, I realized I'm not in love with it anymore. I've grown beyond that. I'm different, and I thought I wanted that. So going back to, so let's go back into that question. I sat down with a mentor and I was a bit challenged and stuck, and I thought, I don't know if I've made a mistake here. And he said to me, if you listed everything that you do in your day and you scratched off all the things that you don't like, what would you keep? And the part that I would keep was I really enjoyed the conversations and the relationships that I was building with channel partners and distribution. So that led me to do a couple of different things. The first one was I wanted to lean into being, lean into the channel relationships and channel sales. And secondly, it made me realize actually if something lights you up, you're better at it. And that lit me up. Let's go back to your question. Can you?
Oh, no, I'm happy to run. What I'm interested in as well, because you've had such a sort of a diverse background of companies, have you seen a change in cultures in some of these companies over the period?
Yeah. So I remember your question now, and I got a little bit distracted with that backstory, that cultures. So the question you asked me was like, what has led me to change? So number one was the channel the channel piece. And what attracted me, which ties to cultures, is I started realizing that what attracts me is a combination of roles where there's something that needs to be built, there's something that needs to be fixed, or there's something that's broken, and I gravitate towards roles that people are afraid to do. So, for example, that comes with a culture. That comes with a culture. Culture. I found that when I work in organizations where the culture is not open to change, or the culture is not open to innovation, they're not open to taking risks, I find that boring.
Yeah.
I just find it draining, really, really, really draining. So a combination of answering two questions that you asked me around culture, but also what attracted me to keep moving forward and changing roles and so on, was that when I realized that I loved channel, I also realized that I loved roles that were not BAU, they were not business as usual. So some of the companies that I've worked for, even the big companies like Dell and Cisco and AWS, like those companies, now they're big. But back when I was working with them, they were not big.
Yeah.
They were little, and they were just splashing into the APJC market. They were just coming into Asia Pacific, and they were trying to figure out how do we become relevant? How do we sign up new customers? How do we sign up new partnerships? How do we actually become, what's our value proposition? And why should anyone care about what we're selling, our solutions? So those things excited me. I found that exciting. And that comes with culture, because organizations who are building tend to hire people who are builders. They tend to hire people who are hungry, who are problem solvers, and are really interested in, they're not bogged down by processes. Processes are built as you start to work, build a sales cycle and build a channel and build a vertical, or working with different industries. But I found that really exciting.
Now, I've got about 100 questions for you because you're throwing so much content out there. Let me ask you this then. When you interview people, what are you looking for?
I look for a combination of different things. I look for, and I actually saw this on LinkedIn. Somebody said, don't hire for potential. I'm like, that's a load of garbage. Because when
how many people would never have got a career if they didn't hire for potential?
Well, I think if you had not seen potential in me, I wouldn't be sitting in this seat today. So I hire for a combination of different things. The first thing that I look for is hunger. So I look for people who have got, they definitely need to have an element of transferable skills. They need to have an element of experience and connections and all of that. But you just cannot teach hunger. You can't teach people to be motivated. And I like people who work fast, people who are prepared to take risks. So I love working with people who can also take negative feedback. So I'll say, John, you're doing a bad job, and let's talk about why that pitch didn't hit the mark, or let's talk through how we can build a strategy that is a lot more specific, more niche, or whatever the feedback is. I need to work with people who can take tough feedback, but I also take tough feedback myself. So that's what I look for. I love people with thick skin who are not soft. And
I'm laughing because I did tell you that I've christened my son the Hammer, my man Sandy Man, the gamer. When I get his analysis, he gives me a touch up. And you and I had a private chat a couple of weeks ago at Moxie. So I'm making a big effort to improve my listening skills on our podcasts, I can assure you. Now let's talk about your leadership. You're a very distinguished lass. You're a high flyer. Are you a good leader?
I don't know if I'm a good leader, but what I can say is that there's different types of leaders, and I don't want people to put me in a box, because that irritates me. So one thing that people don't like about me is that I'm very direct. I'd like to think that I'm very authentic and I'm very
Is that
transparent.
the Argentinian blood coming out, do you think?
You know
Hey?
what? I do think I do think it's the very Latin background, the South American background. But people don't like that about me. But there's other people who love that about me. So it's and I don't care. I don't care because I used to a long time ago. Michelle Stephen actually said this to me. So if she's ever watching this podcast and this, thank you, Michelle, for the feedback. It was really, really early on in my career. She said to me that somebody told her, you're smiling too much, so you're not going to be taken seriously. And she thought, stuff that. I'm going to smile when I want to smile.
Yeah. Be
and
yourself.
I listened.
Yeah.
And fast forward many years later, when I was at Cisco, somebody said to me, you know what, Wendy, if you were older looking and you look different, people would take you more seriously. And I thought, you know what, screw you. Like, that does not make me less smart or more smart or whatever. So I just thought, I'm just going to be my authentic self. So I see myself as an authentic leader, a person who I go after. I'm very goal driven. I always have a plan B and I always run very, very, very fast. Not everyone wants that, and that's okay.
The one thing I would observe as well is that you've digressed quite a few different technologies. How do you get yourself up to speed? And then I'm curious as to what you do for you in terms of your personal development. I know I'm sort of multitasking there. Let's talk first of all about the technologies. How do you keep up to speed with what's happening in the market so that you can make a decision? I've got a wonderful channel group of clients. This is what we need to be delivering for them.
To answer that question, I'm going to take you back to a pivotal point in my career. So the first half of my career, I spent working with product, like physical product on-prem. And fast forward, when I got my dream job and I was working as a BU, the head of brand, that was my official title, head of brand. I realized I was sitting in a room with one of the distributors, Dicker Data at the time, and I was sitting across from them and we were having conversations about unit shipments. And the trend in the market was declining. Server storage networking unit shipments were declining. And one of the core responsibilities of a product manager is to forecast. You need to know how much product to forecast because you need to obviously forecast so product is produced and there's no shortages, supply shortages. If you over forecast, you under forecast and whatever, it has a huge impact on supply chain, positive and negative, and also competition. So at that point, I realized I need to reinvent myself, and I need to reinvent myself really fast because if I don't, I'm going to be left behind. So how do I keep up is at that point, I think for anyone who's listening, and if you're not reinventing yourself, you're doing yourself a disservice because the market is not slowing down. In fact, things are getting faster and faster. So at that point, within about a year, I realized if I don't transition myself really quickly, I'm going to be stuck. So I contacted a couple of different people who I knew in the industry and I got myself a job at AWS. And I made a very conscious decision to go backwards and I went back into being an individual contributor because I thought I'm not going to get anywhere if I focus on titles and how many direct reports I have and how much money I'm earning. I'm like, the most important responsibility I have right now is to myself.
Yes.
And educating myself. So I went into AWS as an IC to learn the hyperscaler world. And it was the best decision I made. And then, of course, I found myself back in leadership. And then fast forward about almost 4 years into my role at AWS, I was tapped on the shoulder by an executive recruitment organization who wanted me to build out Cloudflare's. So that was my last employer, their channel, build out their channel.
Yeah.
And I had no experience in cybersecurity, absolutely no experience. And I remember thinking, like, why are they calling me? Like, I don't know anything about cybersecurity. And again, it's a bit of a pattern with me. I took a risk and it was the right risk. It was measured. And I know a lot of people who would say no. I know a lot of people who would be afraid of taking an opportunity like that because they would be worried that they don't know the technology, they don't have the contacts, they don't know this, that they're not connected into that world. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyway. And what's the worst that could happen? I'll get fired. I'll leave, or I'll just get another job. Who cares? So I did it. I threw myself over the cliff again. And an interesting thing happens when you decide to reinvent yourself. One is that you become really uncomfortable all over again. You have to learn not only the technology, but you also find you're exposed to another set of customers, or even if it's the same customer, it's a new division, another set of partners or distributors. And it might be the same organization, but it's another group of people that you've never worked with before. And so I love that opportunity to reinvent myself. I actually find it exciting. Other people find that exhausting. I love it. I personally love it.
Yeah.
And I really, really encourage anyone who's, any of your listeners to sit back and think, like, what am I afraid of? Like, what's...
Well, let's talk about our younger audience, and then I want you to give yourself a bit of a plug, because I think you're doing something very exciting going forward. You've recruited a lot of young people. What advice would you have? Let's start at the start, and we'll run a couple of themes there. What advice would you have for any young person starting in our industry?
So what advice I would give is that be open to trying new things. I think that fear stops people from even considering an opportunity. They look at an opportunity and they think, I'm not good enough. I don't have enough information. I don't have enough knowledge. So therefore, I'm not going to be successful. I think people are so worried about being successful that they stop, and they don't realize that actually failure is okay. Because when you fail and you mess up or you don't know something, there are people who are there and prepared to help you. So my advice to new people joining the industry is, it's okay for you to only have 10% of the information. It's actually okay. Yeah.
And any habits that they need to develop. And what have you done for you in terms of, what do you do better now than perhaps you didn't do well 20 years ago?
Networking.
Okay, yeah.
I think that one of the most important lessons, I actually learned this very early on, and I have been doing this my entire career, but I got better and better at it, is networking and supporting other people. Because what happens is that the people who I stayed connected with from the very, very, very beginning are people that have supported me, and I've supported them along the journey my entire career. I'll give you a really good example. So you asked me a question earlier on around, people who influenced me. There was somebody who did influence me very early on. His name is Angus Jones. And it's funny because every year on my birthday, he calls me. Every year on my birthday. And he's somebody who I worked with at the very beginning of my career when I was at HPE. And he actually called me yesterday to say, hey, what are you working on? And I told him I've started this company. It's called Take Me Forward. And he said, you know what, Wendy, I'm super proud of you. I'm like, oh, why are you proud of me? And he's like, oh, you know what? And we had a good conversation. And we talked about what we're each doing. And that's an example of somebody who has given me feedback, advice, and we've interacted for years and years and years and years, and has stayed in my circle.
I'll tell you what's nice about that, because I have met Angus. There's nothing in it for him. He's just a nice gentleman. He's happy to help.
Yeah.
It's nice to actually meet people who are happy to give you advice, give you guidance, when there's no sort of hidden agenda, whatever. Let's talk about you now. Let's talk about Take Me Forward, and then I'm going to get you to tell people what you do away from work. Okay? So tell me about the current scenario. This is the most exciting time in your career, as I said to you earlier. Tell everybody what you're about to do.
It is. So look, this year is my 27th year in the tech sector.
Have we not got a special day today, by the way?
It is. It's actually my, you know why I know it's 27 years in the tech sector? Because I got married on this day 27 years ago. And the reason, so today's my wedding anniversary. And you asked me a question like off camera and off the podcast earlier, like, is Wendy Komadina my married name or my maiden name? It's my married name, and I've always been Wendy Komadina because I got married on the 2nd of May in 98, and then I joined the tech sector in the June, exactly 1 month later. Okay. So that's why I know it's 27 years.
Yeah.
So I've worked for 7 of the biggest global tech companies, big American global tech companies, and this year I had it wasn't an epiphany. It's something I've been thinking about for a really, really long time. I've always wanted to jump off another cliff and just start my own business and just see where it took me. So I started Tech Me Forward, and I was thinking about some of the work that I've done to help progress these global tech companies succeed in Asia Pacific. And that's So the summary of what Tech Me Forward is helping global tech companies expand into Asia Pacific through partnerships. So how I do that is through a partner manager as a service model, running strategy and workshops, and helping them expand and connecting these global companies some of them have a presence in Asia Pacific, some of them don't. Connect them to the right partnerships, helping them set up distribution businesses, helping them build out their strategy, where to prioritize, which markets to step into. So it's very fresh and very new.
Now, here's a question for you, and I'm just thinking aloud here because I've got a bad habit of going off on a tangent, as you've probably noticed.
That's okay.
All the beautiful different countries in Asia, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that these multinationals understand the cultural nuances, or do they tend to learn the hard way? You've got such a great background. Are you able to educate these guys and ladies, and perhaps each country you have to do it a little bit differently? How receptive have they been to your insights, if you like? Because you've got a fabulous career, therefore you've got a lot to offer in terms of guidance.
So the majority of global tech companies who have not had experience in Asia Pacific, what they're used to building out one strategy because they're selling into one market, which is North America. And they're all, one language, and the market is very similar. So the challenge that they find, or what I've seen not work, is when they branch out into Asia Pacific, they tend to look at Australia as the biggest market, or they look at Japan and they think, okay, well, let's go to Japan because it's a really big market, huge opportunity. Or the other pattern is, well, Singapore's the central hub, so let's just start in Singapore. So the mistakes that I've seen is they then very quickly spread themselves too thin and they just chase opportunities. They're like, oh, there's an opportunity in India. Let's just, go and sell into India. And there's an opportunity in Korea. So let's, sell into South Korea. But then where they stumble and where they fall over is that in those markets, some of those markets are extremely channel centric. Like if you look at South Korea, you look at Japan, they're a very loyal market where they want to make sure that they're getting approvals. They're through all their different. They're following processes, so they have to go and get buy-in from lots of different approvers and lots of different people within their hierarchy before a decision is made. They tend to not want to be the first. They want to see really strong use cases. They want to work with partners because they see it as less risky. Whereas in India's a very price sensitive market. It's very, very price sensitive. It's a really huge market and it's extremely diverse. So a lot of the tech companies, when they when they branch out into Asia Pacific, they look at India and they go, oh wow, cool, let's go and open up in Bangalore. It's like Bangalore is very different to Delhi. It's very different to Mumbai. It's not the same market. There's different partnerships. There's different, even different types of organizations. So, you've got a lot of the unicorns in Bangalore versus in, North Delhi, you've got a lot of the government sector. So the challenges is that a lot of the tech companies tend to branch out and they overinvest in either one market, or they spread themselves far too thin, and they essentially spread themselves too thin, and they're not successful.
Sometimes it has to be an exercise in patience as well, which you don't get from a lot of these corporations. Right? Now, let me ask you this. Are you still excited about the IT game?
I am. I have explored other things, but I just find I still come back to the tech sector. It lights me up. I just feel like I still have so much more to learn. I feel like every single day I have to reinvent myself. So,
but how do you do that? Do you do personal development? I know you've got your degree. Do you do lots of reading? Have you done post-grad courses? What are you doing for your personal development, first of all? And then we'll finish off with you talk about you, okay? But what have you done for your own learning in the last couple of years?
So earlier I said that I always have a plan B and I do things with intention. So when I was in high school, I did my secretarial course just in case I didn't get into uni. That was my plan B. And so equally, when I see that the market is changing, I go into like this secret little underground world and I educate myself. So during COVID, I was working at AWS and I decided to go, and I was working on some data and analytics projects at AWS, and I felt like a fish out of water. So I secretly went and did a couple of courses around data and analytics, and then I realized, I don't think I'm going to stay in that space. Fast forward, I went into cybersecurity and I did the same. I went and I signed up for a TAFE course, and I did it in secret. Yeah. And my husband, I remember him sitting there thinking, oh my God, like, why do you do this to yourself? I'm like, I don't know why I do this to myself, but I just do, because I just feel like it's always important to not be arrogant, always be learning, and always be the person who's interested in understanding what is the next wave. So I do courses on the side. I do free courses. I sign up for things. But then where I have an opportunity, I attend events, industry events, and I also ask a lot of dumb questions. I'm not afraid to ask people dumb questions.
Yeah. I think you've been great today. You know, the funny thing is, and we're going to digress briefly because we're nearly finished. When we talked a couple of weeks ago, how long have we run for?
50 minutes.
Okay, so remember we said we have to do 25 to 30 minutes because that's what the punters want to see.
Yeah.
Here's my last question for you, because everybody likes you. What do you do for you? What sort of hobbies and interests have you got?
So the thing that a lot of people say this, they love travel, but I really passionately love travel. But I'll tell you why. So one of the little things that my friends know me for is that I've got two sons. So my sons are I've got one who's 19 turning 20, and then my 12-year-old son. So big gap between the two. And I actually treat travel as an opportunity to educate my children on the world. So when I say I love travel, I'm always planning. I guess it goes back to I'm always looking at plan B. I'm always planning ahead. So what I always do for my family is I'm always planning adventures. And every single year, without fail, I plan an adventure for the family. And the routine that I have is normally around the October timeframe. I start planning and booking the following year's travel. And it's always wrapped around what are we going to learn? What are we going to learn around the culture, around history, around just different things? So this year the trip is to Alaska.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to Alaska, and we're going to Canada. But we've done some really incredible trips. So we've been to Pompeii, we've been to South America, we've been to Iguazu, we've been to exotic places like the Bahamas and Tahiti, Bora Bora, and so on. So I really love educating my children, and I do a lot of things. I think ahead. I'm always thinking ahead. So that's a little bit about how I run my family. And in terms of things that I just do for myself is I'm actually a very social person. Like, I just love catching up with friends. I love watching old movies being 80s movies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love cooking. So yeah, I'm a bit of I'm a very social person.
No, that's excellent. So when you talk about planning ahead,
Yeah.
what thoughts have you got for the future, both for yourself and for our industry?
For the future for the industry, gosh, I guess Tech Me Forward is for the industry. One of the things that I love to do is I love to find opportunities to give back. So this is also what you're doing here, which I find really admirable. So in every organization, particularly in the last 10 years, I always look for opportunities like how do I help the next generation? Being a female and being a minority, I've always contributed back through diversity programs. So I do a lot of that. I'm always happy to be a speaker, be a mentor. You know, I do a lot of things that I feel are contributing back to the industry in that way.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Well, I've enjoyed having you in. It's been an absolute pleasure. It was just fantastic to see you a couple of weeks ago when we caught up, etc. I'm going to finish with an anecdote, and I'm going to look at this camera. I'm going to say, having helped Wendy in 2003, the background was that I went and met her at the shopping centre in Rhodes. And then a great lad called Simon Johnson came into my boardroom in North Sydney and interviewed Wendy. And Simon is a top man, big, tall lad. He's got a great executive presence and he's a very senior gentleman. And he came into my office after 1 hour and he said, John, you would not believe this. He said, that young lady interviewed me. I didn't get the chance to interview her. He said, I think she's going places, so I want to offer her a role. And in a sense, I think that's very prophetic. And I've enjoyed talking to Wendy. She's had the most wonderful career, especially for young ladies watching. Certainly a role model. My name is John Waters. I think we've run over the 28 to 30 minutes that Wendy said we would run. I'm Managing Director at Abercorn International Search. Thank you for watching Inspiring Careers. And we will see you in 1 month. Okay, bye.